Hello, welcome to Board Games with Niramas. Today it's time for another top 10 list. I've been wanting to do this for a while. It's been a while since I did a top 10, so now it's time. And first of all, I'm just going to mention, as you can see, I'm wearing the Board Games with Niramas t-shirt. That is now ready. And the design is not perfect yet. I'm going to adjust it a bit because Drako doesn't show as much as I would like to here. But this is the back, by the way. I think it's easiest to just show it like this. So here you have the back of the t-shirt where you have the logo and the address for the YouTube channel as well. And you will be able to get one of these very soon, so keep an eye on the channel for when that comes. And of course I'll try to get that new, a bit better in the colors sort of layout for that one. Okay, so let's get going for the top 10 list, and it's top 10 games for new board gamers. What do I mean by new board gamers? Well, let's say you have just played, the standard Monopoly, Risk, Clue, perhaps. Then this is something for you to check out. This is going to be 10 games that is better than those games, much better, much more interesting. It's modern board games in a sense. And but I'm going to mix a bit. So in these 10, there's going to be some old ones, some new ones, different categories, different types of game, different game mechanics, because the game is every game is built on some mechanics on what are you doing all through the game to reach that goal. Mostly it could be maybe throw a dice, it could be draw a card or whatever. So let's get into it, and here's my number 10. So my number 10 game on this list is Catan, or Settlers of Catan as it used to be called back in the days when I got it. They shortened down the title a bit there, so it's just Catan now. And there's a whole bunch of series of Catan games. So what I'm talking about is the sort of original Settlers of Catan, where you have a board where you have these hexes. And basically this game, it's really fun, it's really easy to get into, and what this game is all about is sort of rolling dice and hoping to get the right number. But the nice thing is it's not just random. You still have, because you're rolling 2 dice, so the probability of getting 6 or 7 or 8 is of course higher with 2 dice than it is to get a 1 or a 12. So therefore you can plan a bit, you can do some strategic thinking, even though it's focused around dice throwing. And it's also it's a good way to get into resource management, because what you're doing is you have these hexes with different kinds of terrain on them, and you're building your settlements in between those hexes. So let's say you build in between some forest and some farmland and some grassland, and then each hex has a number on it, and this is all variable as well. You can sort of mix it up, so there's a lot of variation in it. So then you will roll the dice each time it's your turn, each time it's some player's turn. And let's say you get a 6 and you have a 6 on that forest that your settlement's next to, then you're going to get a piece of wood. And then you will use that piece of wood to build roads, and you will build more settlements, so you have more chances of scoring those resources when the die are rolled. And you can upgrade your settlements into cities, which also means you get more resources, which you can use to build more stuff. And the first to a certain amount of points win the game, and you get points for each settlement you have and so on. And there's also expansions for this. I don't play the base game really anymore. I prefer it with the Seafarers and the Knights and Cities, I think it's called. These 2 expansions. Seafarers is one where you have boats and you can go out to islands and so on. In Knights you have these knights that are protecting your city, because you also have an element of sort of outlaws coming and trying to grab your stuff and so on. So that's my number 10, Settlers of Catan, or just Catan. And so for my number 9, my number 9 is totally different from the number 10, Catan. My number 9 is For Sale. For Sale is a card game. You basically just have a deck of cards, special cards. You have some coins as well. So what you're going to do is it's sort of like a auction game where you put out every round. You put out these buildings that are on the cards, and then you have some money you start with, and then everybody bids on who to go first to pick one of these buildings out there because they have different value. And you do this a few times, and then you go over to the next phase of the game where you have these buildings that you bought, and then you're going to sell them and try to get the best money card, get most paid for your building. Really fun game, really quick, easy. You can be a bunch of people playing it at once, and I mean, it's one of those games where once you start pick it up and put it on the table, you're not going to play one round, you're going to play a few times, I guess. Really fun game. You can check it out also. Click the little link, I think it's up there, little I, to go to see my little run through for it. It was a short run through, so just demonstrate how the game works. But check it out, that's my number 9 for Sale. So for my number 8 game on this list of beginning games, it's Cottage Garden. Cottage Garden is a lovely little, I mean, it's looking lovely. You have these flowers that you're going to plant in your garden. You have some cats sleeping. You have some flower pots and stuff. Really lovely game. This one you could play with your grandma or whatever. Really family game. Easy to get into, and it's a puzzle. It's like if you imagine Tetris from the old, Tetris game. It's sort of like you try to mix these tiles in so they will form a perfect square and so on, and you will score points. Really easy to get into, and you can check out my run report up there as well. It's made by Ove Rosenberg, who made a lot of good Euro games. One of the great designers, and really lovely one. It's one from 2016, and check that out, Cottage Garden. That's my number 8. My number 7 is Karuba. Karuba is a fun little game that came out in, I think, late 2016 or mid 2016. I did a run through for it as well. You can check that out, of course. But Karuba is a tile laying game, and this is sort of, a lot of people will probably ask, like, why doesn't he have Carcassonne on his list of games for new players? Well, I thought about it, but sort of Karuba gives me the same feeling in a way, but just shorter and easier and more fun, to be honest. So Karuba is really fun. You have this, you're on an island, you have these adventurers, they're going to try to get to temples and grab treasures along the way, and everybody starts out the same. And then you draw these tiles, it's almost like bingo. You draw a tile and you say the number on the tile, and then everybody has to place their number, whatever it was. And then you try to form roads to the temples. Really fun game, really quick ones, like 30-40 minutes or something. Really fun game to do. Like, you can even buy, I mean, it's up to 4 players in one copy of the game, but you can even have 2 copies and you can play 8 players at the same time, because it doesn't really matter. You can be a lot of people. So that's a really fun little tiling game. Check that out. That's my number 7, Karuba. My number 6 on this list is 7 Wonders. 7 Wonders is a civilization building game, you could say, but basically it's a game to introduce you to card drafting, because everybody gets these cards, and then you're going to pick one and keep one, and you're going to use it for something like building a wonder or building a building and so on in your civilization. And then the other 6 cards you're going to pass to your the guy next to you. And then it keeps going around like that. You can play it up to 7 players. And so once everybody got their 7 cards out, because you keep going around, and then you go to the next phase and you have 3 different areas there. Really fun game. You have a little player board and you're sort of trying to reach goals by building a wonder, where you will get points or other effects that benefit you. You also have a sort of a war against, at the end of each area you have a war against the guy to your left and the guy to your right, and so you need to build some military units out of those cards to be able to win that war. And you can go for science and so on. Really fun, really classic game in sort of board gaming. I mean, it's mostly a card game, but I usually use the word board gaming to describe the whole hobby, really. So check that out. That is 7 Wonders, my number 6. my number 5 is a card game as well. This one is a pure card game, and it's called Dominion. And Dominion is the really classic sort of deck building game. And what that means is you start with a few cards, you have some money on those cards, and you have you sort of playing cards with that money on to be able to buy other cards, and then you include them in your deck. So then sort of later when you pull a card, it might be that card that you bought. And so you sort of make a strategy based on which cards do you want to buy and include in your deck, because you don't want to have too many cards either, because if you have a bunch of cards, then it's going to take a while before you pull that one that you really want. And Dominion can be varied in so many ways. There's a bunch of expansions, and it's sort of like, I mean, some games are really friendly, just everybody's just competing sort of to get the most points. Some games could be aggressive, where you have cards that you can purchase that sort of make the other guys lose something, and so on. So it can really be a varied game, really fun, really easy to play, easy to get into. So check that out. That's Dominion, my number 5. Now my number 4 is Police Precinct. Police Precinct is a cooperative game where you are all cops and you're in this city where there's a lot of crime going on, and you have this main goal of trying to capture or solve a murder case, because you need to find evidence, you need to find a murder weapon, you need to examine the deceased one and find sort of like time of death and the cause of death and so on. But at the same time as you're doing this, and you have to do it and then arrest the murderer, because you sort of know who it is, but you don't have the proof yet. But at the same time you're doing this, crime is going on in the city. As usual, it could be a crocodile that has escaped from the zoo and it's blocking traffic, or it could be a chainsaw wielding maniac that is in the hospital and you have to go save those poor nurses. So it's a really fun game. It's sort of like it's a serious theme, but they made it like it's more of a sort of fun game, and it's sort of like humor in it. But it's kind of hard. It's hard to beat, and it's kind of chaotic as well, because you're not just playing your turn, where you usually go drive your car somewhere, your cop car, and you roll dice to solve something. But it's also when there's another player's turn, you can help him out playing a card and so on. So, and some will ask, why didn't he include Pandemic on this list? Well, that's because I like Police Precinct more. I think it's a more fun game. It's a more better team, and it's more fun, to be honest. But it could be hard to get Police Precinct if you're in Europe, I think. So if you have a hard time finding Police Precinct and you think it sounds interesting, you could check out Pandemic as well. It's the same basic cooperative game, and then it's sort of different themes and different variants and details. But Pandemic is a good game as well. So it's a good game. Then I just don't like the theme a lot, where you go around trying to stop diseases. It's way too serious for a game, I think. But check out Police Precinct. I did a run through as well. You can check the link up there for that one. Really fun game. So that's my number 4. And now for my number 3. My number 3 is Isle of Skye. And once again, it's a tile-laying game. It's quite similar to Carcassonne. It sort of builds on that. But Isle of Skye is a really, really lovely little, so beautiful little game. And I think Isle of Skye, in reality, is an island outside Scotland that's really beautiful. It's known for that. And so the game is sort of based on that. But you have this castle, and then you're going to build with little tiles. You're going to build up your kingdom, basically, to earn more money and get points. You have variable goals, so every time you play it, it's so different, because sometimes you need to get some animals out there on your tiles. Sometimes you're just building sort of shapes like squares and so on. So it's a really good game in that variation. And you also sort of have this little screen over your castle where you're hiding your money, and then every round you're going to be buying tiles even from each other, and sort of you have to sort of keep track on how much money the other guys have, so you know how, because if you're going to set the price for your tiles, how much they're going to cost. And the thing is, if someone else wants to buy them, well, might have made it expensive for them. But the problem is, if they don't buy it, then you have to buy it from the bank, sort of. So really lovely game. It's sort of economical. It's tiling. It's some puzzle in it as well, and I really like that. It's a really beautiful little game. You can check my run through for it as well. So Isle of Skye is my number 3. My number 2 is a game that I haven't played that much actually. I sort of discovered it pretty recently when a friend brought it up to the table. But it's really fun. It's called Camel Up or Camel Cup. It's a bit confusing there with the name, but I think it's Camel Up actually if you go check Board Game Geek and so on. What this game is, it's basically just it's a probability game, so it's sort of like calculating odds basically, which I like. I'm a gambler, sort of. I like that. And so you have these camels that are racing on a board and try, really fun setting, really crazy setting. And they also can stack upon each other. So the one at the top is the first one, which means that if one of the ones at the bottom moves, well, the guy on top is going to tag along on top of there. Really crazy fun game, and it's all about sort of trying to calculate, well, what are the odds that the green camel is going to move there, and you can sort of figure it out because you know what dice can be rolled, and yeah, it's really fun. The game has so much laughing going on when we played it a few times. So that's my number 2 game, Camel Up. And so for my number 1, the number 1 game on this list, the list of games that I recommend for new players in the hobby of board gaming, well, Nations the Dice game. It's a really lovely little game. It's based on the game Nations, which is a quite heavy nation building game, but then the designer made this dice game, which is a quick little game. It goes under an hour, and you're rolling dice, and you get resources on the dice, so you can get swords to fight and so on, and then you use them to purchase buildings and conquer areas and so on. But it's also made in just these tiles that you buy, and you can build wonders. But it's really easy to get into, really fun to play. There's a lot of strategy involved, but it's a dice rolling game, so there's luck involved, of course. But then you can sort of re-roll as well. You can make choices to hire these advisors that gives you more rerolls, and that means you can sort of affect the luck a bit because you're able to re-roll your dice and get something that you need. So really fun game. You can check it out. Also my run through for it. Nations the Dice game is my number 1 game for new players, and I hope that you enjoy this list. I think a lot of people might not agree with me because I did leave some classic, beginner games out there. I didn't include them on this one because I think everybody does, and I sort of also went from what do I like, because all of these games, all these 10 games, I can play anytime. You can ask me, do you want to play any of these, and I'll do it. That's even though I played a lot of games, so they're good for beginners. They're easy to get into. But you can also have them for a lot of years. That's why I recommend them, because you can have them for a bunch of years and you're going to enjoy them even though you play them a bunch of times, and you can still bring them to your family on Christmas or whatever and play it with friends or family that perhaps never tried board games. So that's why I think these are so good. And I also try to make a mix of new and old. So there's some old games in there like Catan and, well, for Sale, Dominion. They've been around for a while. But then you have things like Isle of Skye, Cottage Garden, that are sort of more new games in the board gaming hobby. So I hope you enjoyed the list, and thank you so much for watching it. If you leave a comment or a like for the video, Drako, he has his little thumb there. He wants you to like the video. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great evening or morning, or whenever you're watching this. Take care. Bye bye.